The corporate culture, impact and implications. We're now getting into the basics of thoughts and beliefs about what defines the philosophical essence of the organization. Corporations, like people, have personalities, and that makeup of personality is the base of corporate culture. The organization's culture has a tremendous influence on the ethical decision-making that comes from all levels, from the top leadership to those working the front lines. In this unit, we'll study the differences between a compliance culture and a values culture, the role of corporate leadership in establishing the culture, and we'll look at the difference between effective leaders and ethical leaders. We'll go into depth on how a cornerstone of the ethical corporate culture is the mission statement. Codes of conflict, of course, also come into play here. We'll take up how reporting mechanisms such as ethics hotlines and ombudsmans can help an ethical approach to an integral part of business, and we'll take up the importance of assessments, monitoring, and auditing of the culture and ethics programs. Sometimes, though, a positive and ethical culture needs to be imposed upon businesses and the entire corporate world. It's when we get into this point that government regulation comes into play. First, let's spend some time with the corporate culture and figuring out just what it is. Well, what we have is a pattern of shared beliefs, expectations, and meanings which influence and direct the members of an organization, how they think and act in carrying out their responsibilities and services. Well, think about it. What type of person are you, and how did you come to be you? Well, it's not likely that you were simply born that way. We all tend to be influenced by the people we've met and the events we've experienced. We take what we've learned from others and incorporate them into our own personalities. Take those you've known over the years who have impressed you in some way, maybe with their success in the way they behave in challenging situations. Well, we've all encountered those who we think, I want to be like him or her. Well, the same can go with a corporate culture. Individuals within the organization can be influenced by the behaviors of leadership, mission statements, or codes of conduct. We like to think that this is all for the good, but there can be cases where the corporate culture might lead some into making the wrong or even unethical decisions. And going a step further, we come to the consideration of a compliance versus a values-based culture. Generally, the traditional approach has been the compliance culture. This is where rules and the obedience to those rules is the primary ethical controller, with the mandating of legal compliance and internal codes with a strict internal enforcement. A values-based or integrity-based culture, on the other hand, emphasizes and reinforces positive ideals rather than the strict adherence to specific rules. Of course, with a compliance culture, you can be assured that your organization is at least operating within the letter of the law in enforcing the basics of ethical behavior. But more recent thought is that there needs to be a true belief in ethical values. The problems with a compliance approach is that it can only be as effective as its specific rules. And there are only so many rules, and they'll never clearly or precisely apply to every situation. On the other hand, a values culture can adapt itself to incorporate the personal integrity of its members to do the right thing when the rules don't apply, but when a decision still has to be made. The goals of a compliance organized program can be simple and not require an excess amount of thought. Meet the legal and regulatory requirements, minimize the risk of lawsuits and indictments, and have procedures in place to make everyone accountable. By themselves, the compliance approach will keep a firm out of trouble. But more recent thinking is that simply obeying the law and being accountable aren't enough. There are some intangibles that come into play, such as maintaining a firm's brand and reputation, recruiting and keeping top quality employees, helping to unify the firm's operations, creating a better work environment, and doing the right thing in addition to doing things right. In making the corporate culture work to the benefit of all, the responsibility starts at the top. It's the corporate leadership that oversees the effort and must be the most diligent of all to live up to the organization's ethical standards and set the tone for all others. Setting the tone not only involves personal behavior, but also allocating corporate resources in support of encouraging, promoting, and enforcing ethical behavior. The text points to the management charge that budgeting is all about values. We next get into the comparison between effective leaders and ethical leaders. Key leadership in a company can transform a business culture into something that's better or make it worse. An effective leader is one who can get the group to accomplish its goals. As our study of Enron shows thus that, however, leadership is not always ethical leadership, and unfortunately, the ethical leader is not always an effective leader. But that's another topic. The establishment and encouragement of an ethical business environment comes from the leader who empowers employees to make ethical decisions in their own actions and actually expects them to do so. Still, it's not an ethical method by itself that makes the ethical leader. There are cases where the leader may have to make decisions where some means of action are ethically better than others. And an ethical means of leading does not necessarily make for ethical leadership. This is where values come into play and how we build a values-based corporate culture. It's up to the leader to make sure an organization has a set of guiding principles to extend throughout the entire organization in helping employees adhere to ethical values in making their decisions. Operating in an unfair, unethical manner, however, can create a good deal of ill will and could even end up hurting the firm in the long run. Therefore, it's essential that top leadership send the message that while profits are important, how the group succeeds in accomplishing its financial goals is just as important. A mission statement or code of conduct helps set the foundation for offering a clear vision of ethical behavior for all stakeholders, employees, customers, and others. The code can enhance a firm's reputation and provide guidance and even a how-to for making ethical decisions. It's a first step toward helping avoid risk. Likewise, the code can set the vision and should be inspiring. The code or the mission statement should be the foundation, the core tenets on which the company is built. Above all, to develop a code that will alter an organization's culture for the better is the belief that the goals are possible, realistic, and achievable. To cement the message, it'll require the leadership to be fully on board, or else there'll be no confidence or faith in the changes. To fully integrate a cultural change into an organization requires an all-out effort and commitment. The change has to be communicated, must become part of the firm's vocabulary, habits, and attitudes, and then spread to the firm's corporate life, decision-making, and how it determines success. Reporting illegal or unethical activities is important to establishing and maintaining an ethical culture. But there can be problems as well. Whistleblowing is a form of reporting such activities to someone in a position to take action against wrongdoing. Whistleblowing casts a light on and even brings about an end to illegal or unethical activities. But there can be a downside. Whistleblowing can carry an appearance of disloyalty by the reporting person. It can harm business and can even result in serious cost to the whistleblower. The next step in making the cultural change work is to assess the monitor progress. The text tells us that if one cannot measure something, it often declines in importance. The same goes with culture. Now, we have to be able to measure the results of the change effort or others will begin to quit paying attention to it. But when done successfully, problems can be spotted in advance and prevented. Of course, when internal corporate efforts fail to bring about an end and enforce ethical actions and adherence to the law, in all likelihood the government will step in. The United States Sentencing Commission is an organization that can enter the picture to mandate sentencing procedures. In 1987, for example, the Commission prescribed mandatory federal sentencing guidelines to apply to individual and organizational defendants in the federal system. Basically, the Commission imposes an ethical and legal corporate environment. Corporations that create their own compliance systems are rewarded, or at least they're either not penalized or the penalties are reduced. On the other hand, corporations that do not have effective ethics and compliance systems in force can actually be hit with additional sentences, maybe probation, and still have to develop a program. The bottom line is that it's better to make the moves in advance to incorporate an ethical and legal approach to business and the compliance systems to make it work than it is to let the government come in and do it.